Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rolldown, the TFT Esports podcast, where we talk about everything from the grassroots to the pro scene, from the couch to the crown. My name is CLE, and as always, joined by my constant co-host, Gangly. You're not in costume. What's going on?
No, you're right. Well, first off, it's not Halloween when we're recording this, but also I'm not on the broadcast today, Jack. You're the one that should be in costume. Here, come on. I got a costume for you right here. Hold on.
The microphone's in front of your face, but I think you're doing a soju slump. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Anyway, we got 30 minutes. We got to keep it going.
Yeah, we do. You'll see my costume later. It's going to be great. It's going to be a good time. But we're here to give you guys a sneak peek, a preview of what's going to happen in weekend 2 of the regional finals. This is a very special episode, once again, teamed up with the TFT Esports team to give you guys some coverage of the event, even before the show starts on the countdown, as a way to help share some stories. And today, we're going to be covering a bunch of stuff. A week 1 recap, the format of week 2, and we're going to break down all of the players playing this weekend and competing for the Tactician's crown, as well as some of our predictions for who's going to make it and some of the dark horses. So, Gangly, you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's make it happen. Here we go. This is the story of week 1 a little bit. And before we zoom in on some of the players, this is that qualified players graphic from the previous week, looking at some of the groups of players that we had enter week 1 and who has now made it to week 2 and the TPC next set.
I mean, it was an absolute bloodbath all around, except maybe for the ranked ladder. You can see here all the players crossed off are the players that were eliminated. The one grouping of players that really kind of got out with just a couple scratches was this ranked ladder. Something that really stood out to me in particular is that if you kind of look at what these boxes represent, Tactician's Cup number 1, Tactician's Cup number 2, those are the players who performed well in, truthfully, the smallest sample size across the set. One tournament that if you did well enough, you'd be able to make it into the regional finals. And then the TPC players who didn't make it in were actually the players who performed the worst in the TPC. 13 of the bottom 16 players from the TPC in pro points got eliminated over the course of week 1 in the regional finals. And the ranked ladder, yeah, it's not tournament, but it is the players with the highest volume and the highest sample size of games. And so I think it did just kind of show that these were the players who were hungry for success, that grinded all set long. And in the end, they were rewarded in week 1 with an advancement to the TPC.
And we say often that TFT is a game of variance, and sometimes you just got to get lucky to make it through and all these things. And maybe there's some truth to that, but this specifically has proven that, hey, if you're consistent on ladder, if you're consistent in the TPC, you have a higher chance of making it through the tournament, and that's exactly what we saw happen. Ranked ladder being probably the most significant data point for us here is, hey, you were consistent on ladder, being able to win lots of games this set and climb a lot of LP. Well, that means you're good at the game this set. So well done to those guys making it through. Let's talk about some of their journeys, though, because this is very interesting for all the players that entered week 1. Only 20 made it through, and specifically looking at our day 2 and 3, where all the players entered together and looking at the score sheet. I know it's a little small on your screen, but it does tell a big story about everything that happened.
The new format that we had this set for the week 1 of regional finals, first off, if you didn't get to watch it, was amazing. Such an amazing advancement in formats that we got to be able to see players have fewer games and be rewarded for playing in a big enough sample size that it didn't feel like all luck, but also allowed them to end their runs early in a positive way. Lumen, Fan the Kiki, ran away with week 1, day 1, and then clutched it up in day 2. But what was really cool for me was that as the day went on, the scores got tighter and tighter. And it basically meant that by the end of day 2, every single game felt like we were in checkmate, right? Everyone has complete control of their own destiny. We did not have any dead games with nothing to play for all weekend long.
And speaking of control of your own destiny, there's a couple of players that got into this top 8 that absolutely dominated those first 2 games to set themselves up to be like, all right, I'm done for the day. We made it through. We're on to week 2. And specifically want to call out Kiyun and David Ace, who had Kiyun went 1-1 and David Ace went 2-1 to make it through. and just absolutely smurfed day 2. We're ready to roll and absolutely proved that, hey, they are going to be in the TPC next set and are going to be competing for the Tactician's Crown spots this weekend. So excited about those guys, but I think where it got super, super interesting was as we got down to our last 2 games and the situations there of people maybe missing the mark that they needed to hit in order to make it through, and also players that clutched up and were able to make it and really make a statement in those last few games.
Yeah, the 2 names that stand out the most to me are actually 21 and 20 on this list, CMB and Stellar Minhee. Stellar Minhee, unfortunately, lost every single tiebreaker on after game 8, after game 10, then after game 12, and was tied for the cutoff every single time and just lost a tiebreaker 3 times in a row. It was pretty brutal. I also did I did maybe caster curse Minhee a little bit there, which was pretty brutal for me. But someone like CMB, who had this really hot run on day 1, was faltering all day long on day 2. And then in the final game, because the scores are so close together, despite having a bad day, is able to go first, win the tiebreaker, and then make it back into the TPC as another Brazilian representative there. So just really dramatic way to end the tournament day.
Well, I'm glad you're taking responsibility for what you did too, because Stellar, you didn't deserve that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my bad.
But it also shows the volatility of some of this format too, of like, hey, if you don't qualify and get in that spot early when you have the chance, it really does hurt, right? Like you fall a victim to the next 2 games every time. And there was a lot of interesting stories around that. I think somebody who had the opposite story of Stellar is Ripple, who fought through and had a tiebreaker going into those last 2 games, was just at the top and did not miss a beat. Went 2 more top 4s, claimed that spot, and was good to go. So a lot of good players made it through into that week number 2, and I am super excited to talk about them because, as we've talked about a few times, players are playing for 2 different things this set. And specifically this regional finals is looking at the TFT Pro Circuit next set, which now all 32 of these players have done. And now we're looking at week 2, where we're fighting for the Tactician's Crown slots. This is the list for the set 16 TPC, both Americas and EMEA on our screen. But looking at the left side of our screen, we'll see the 32 that have made it. And I'm so excited to see all these players face off against each other all next set as well as this weekend.
I love the mixed, kind of tier of player that we got in terms of notoriety. All of our big stars, for the most part, made it back into the TPC. Dish Soap was the one player that everyone was really watching in those first couple of games just to make sure nothing was going awry. But it also opened up the door for players with just less experience. Crazy Cat is the one player on this list that really stands out to me, especially because one of the things I saw was that Crazy Cat didn't even know going into day number 2 on Sunday. He didn't even know that he was qualifying into the TPC if he made top 20. And so out of nowhere, we just have these Cinderella runs of players making it into the top 20, qualifying into the TPC. And now TPC next set is looking like, of course, it's obviously going to be stacked every time. But I love that it's both stacked with historical gods of the Americas alongside some players who are some exciting up-and-comers.
Absolutely. It is going to be a wonderful time watching them face off against each other all the time, but we're going to talk about specifically today the regional finals week 2. We've looked at this graphic a bunch, but now it's simple because we are in week 2. All of the players have qualified for the set 16 Pro Circuit, and now our eyes are turned to Tactician's Crown and the slots this weekend that are going to be available for the taking. Now the question is, how? How do our players get there? What does the format look like for our players to get those spots? And so we're going to jump into a talk about our format and how this works. This is very similar to the TPC formats that happened throughout the entire set. 32 players enter on week 2, day 1. They play 6 games together, shuffling every 2 games. And after that, the bottom 8 are eliminated for day number 2, but 24 advance to fight some more. When we get to day 2, though, 24 players then fight for 2 more games, and this is where it starts to get a little brutal, Gangly, because after just 2 games, 8 more are eliminated.
It's sort of the opposite of what we saw last weekend, right? Where we had the soft eliminations on day one, and then day two, that first cutoff was actually for the top X number of players that advanced into the next stage of the tournament. This time around, though, because our first elimination is going to be on day two with the bottom 8 players, what it actually means is, whereas last week, going into day two, you could kind of choose whether or not you wanted to play more volatile to kind of earn points and secure your advancement slot in that top 8 cutoff. Here, especially if you're in the middle of the pack going into day two, I would expect to see more players lean into, I would say the less first rate style, the more consistent get your points and get out. Maybe we'll see a bit more people lean into reroll or play uncontested compositions rather than leaning into the highly contested but high first place share compositions.
And one thing we haven't talked about, but we should mention, is that there was a B patch between these 2 weeks. And so the meta is going to look different as well. So maybe a little bit less first rate comps that show up, and maybe a little bit more of a comp variety, maybe a little bit less mech. So we're excited to see what that looks like. But after this, doing the math correctly, there's 16 players left to still fight for 8 slots in the final lobby on day number 3. And after 2 more games with a group of 16, 4 advance, 4 more are eliminated. But again, as we talked about looking at our scoreboard from last week, getting in those early advances is super important. And so for those players that have been popping off so far, they are going to be rewarded with that. But then it's all going to be down to 8, where the top 4 and the bottom 4 will advance and be eliminated. And we'll have a picture of our final lobby and who will be looking for Tactician's crown slot.
Not too much more to add on top of what you said, except that I just want to double down on this idea that the cutting the top and the bottom, something it's allowed us to do, is have every single game of the day mean something to pretty much every single player left in the tournament. There's a world where maybe there are some players that even if they go first can dodge, can't make advancement. From what we've seen, though, especially with this few players in the field, it's extremely unlikely that will ever happen. I think every player who is in the tournament will always have their tournament life in their own hands. So it's going to be very exciting to watch all weekend.
100%. And then the most exciting day where we get to see who we are sending to the Tactician's Crown is that final day where 8 players will play 6 games. And at the end of those 6 games, 6 players will advance to the Tactician's Crown from that final lobby. And I think one of the most interesting parts to talk about here about this format is, yes, it's very exciting for all 6 of these players to make it. We're so excited to see who they're going to be, but it's heartbreaking for those 2 that don't.
Those bottom 2 players, we've seen it for the last couple sets. There's always a couple slots at the bottom that don't advance to Tactician's Crown. And I think it's just important to see who's going to be able to keep their wits. If you're trying to play to not go 8th, you're going to go 8th. You just got to make sure you're playing like yourself all weekend long. Also, I think it's important to note that this is not checkmate. All set long, we've seen checkmate at all the TPCs. This is actually the first time at a major event for TFT in set 15 that we're not going to be seeing the checkmate format. We're kicking it old school, 6 games of play, and you're just trying to get as many points as possible.
There is a checkmate stipulation, but we're not going to talk about that because the odds of that happening are not that likely. So we'll save that for broadcast. If that does happen, we'll explain it to you later. But again, we're fighting for 6 slots to Tactician's Crown, but we have more than that for the Americas because 3 participants have already been selected through the TFT Pro Circuit. So across the globe, there's 40 total players going to the Tactician's Crown. And so we in the Americas and EMEA have 6 slots left to give, where CN and APAC have 8 and 9 respectively. So we are going to keep our eyes across the globe this weekend to see who all is going to be there and see how the Americas can bring home another crown. But let's talk about some of the players we are sending already. Michael, Marcel P, and Robin Songs already all qualifying for the Tactician's Crown.
Marcel P not only qualifying to the Tactician's Crown, he's officially back in the TPC after making the week 1 run. That was a little bit scary. Barely missed out on auto advancing into week 2. But I just want to say I am really excited about all of the Americas reps. I think they all kind of represent different eras of the game in some way. Of course, Michael and Robin are both old school, but Robin, I think to a lot of people is seen as the godfather of TFT. One of the oldest players that we've had. Yeah, I mean oldest in veteranship, but
Sure.
take it as you will. This is a player who has made it to the final lobby of a regional final 7 times before and is one of only 2 players from the Americas to have won 2 regional finals. And so I'm really excited to be able to see Robin take another shot at a Tactician's crown.
Yeah, and the rest of these players on this screen are also titans of their own regions for sure.
Yeah.
I think specifically looking at APAC, I'm terrified of specifically Ironbog and YBY1. They are absolutely crazy. Lakoko from EMEA is a great player as well. But we're excited to continue to figure out who's going to get the last 29 slots from across the globe, but we're going to now focus specifically on the Americas because we're on the Americas pre-show. We're excited to watch these players, and so we want to help you guys understand what in the world you're going to look at, who you're going to root for, and look at that specifically through putting our players in some buckets, some categories to help us understand the expectations and what they're playing for and how we expect for them to perform this weekend. So, Gangly, here's where we go. Our first bucket. We just talked about these guys. They're on a victory lap. They have a little bit less to play for. This is some practice for them. Maybe a little bit of a chill ride.
I definitely understand the argument that these players have nothing to play for, right? They're the only players in the Americas field that don't have to worry about their slot at the Tactician's crown. That said, I think if you're a competitor at this level, there's no way you're going into the second week of regional finals treating it like there's nothing to play for, right? I think all of these players not only want to compete at the Tactician's crown, I think they want to show that they're one of the most dominant forces our region has to offer. Robin Songs, imagine a world where he gets his 3rd regional finals win, becomes an uncontested title holder there. Michael also just coming off of a bit of a slump for the last few sets before getting invited into the TPC. There's just a lot of opportunities for some of these players to, I guess, improve their story or just make a really beautiful run that stands out among even the TPC.
Yeah, their Tactician's crown slots are locked, but the regional finals is a big deal for all of these players. And so looking forward to seeing if any of them will not only lock in that slot, but also the title here. And also that could possibly unlock checkmate. So we'll talk about that if we get there. Another big category, and this is probably the one that we all look at and we say, hey, these players are the ones that we expect to make the Tactician's crown. And if they don't, I'm sure that they are let down as well. These 6 competitors, Cambuli, Wajan Iverson, Setsuko, Dishsoap, Prestonant, and K3 Soju are the players that we say are our favorites going into the weekend.
K3 Soju being on this list, I think, seems almost like funny to some viewers, right? Like when you're looking at the big 3 of the Americas, and then you have Preston and Cambuli, who each on their own over the last couple sets have really been pushing, their entry into that barrier of the other elites. Soju just historically has not been in that same category. But what we have seen from Soju historically is that when he's on, he is an elite player. It's just that we don't get to see it for an extended amount of time. This is the first time I can remember that Soju has competed at that elite level all set long, right? He is he made it to every single one of the final lobbies, is the pro points leader in the Americas. And I mean, he went on a rant saying after the Star Guardian Cup that he's making it to Worlds, right? He's going to be making it to the Tactician's crown. I don't know if I believe that Soju should always be in this list, but I think that for this regionals, he absolutely needs to be.
Being the number 1 pro points holder for the TPC is a huge accomplishment. But I do think for the rest of these players on this list, there's a little bit more of a consistency to them of no matter what tournament they're in, they are people that we say they should win or could win or all of these things. So they fit into that box. Obviously, Dishsoap probably being the front runner of this, being the most winning player, specifically at the Tactician's crown, having 2 of them already to his name. But any of these players that we would send, I would be super excited to watch. They are also, I would probably expect 3 of the 6 slots to go to these players. Would you say it would be disappointment if less than 3 make it?
Would it be disappointment? I think so, but I feel like I almost feel the opposite, where it's like if 3 of our 6 slots that come from this are any of the players on this list, I'm very excited because we might be winning Tactician's crown again. Something I also want to bring up about some of the players on this list is that Wajan, Setsuko, Dishsoap, of course, have all won tournaments before, but Cambuli, Prestevant, and Soju are all three players that have not actually won an elite Riot endorsed tournament in the past. The one player in particular that I think this is maybe shocking regarding is Gangly. To me, Gangly has been at the level of he could win a tournament like this for quite a while now, and it does feel like every set he's getting marginally better and better. It does feel like he's due, and with the performance he's put up this set, I think there's no reason to believe that that's not possible. So I'm really excited to see if Gangly is actually able to turn it on.
Yeah, me too. And there's some of these other players in our competition that maybe have turned it on this set and have really put themselves in contention to be like, these guys might win the whole thing because of their performance this set. And this contender category is the one that I look at and I say, oh boy, these guys are going to give those favorites a run for their money.
For different reasons too, right? Some of this is historical precedent. I think of players like Pokygom. I think of players like Spencer. I think even Ripple Overdrive to a certain degree. And some of these players I think are based on their current form and what they've showed off this set. You could look at Kiyun, I think, especially for that reason. This guy has absolutely dominated. He averaged like a 3.0 AVP in the cups, and then he made it to the regional finals and was out after 8 games and just auto qualified into the TPC. You have someone like Bobster, who is maybe the perpetually underrated player of the Americas, primarily by us, who's made a statement throughout the set, making top 8 at one of the TPCs and earning a top 12 pro point leaderboard slot. And then on top of that, I think Bobzera, who's having this like resurgence set, who did really well in multiple regular seasons and then struggled at the big events. And in the TPC has been completely the opposite, right? Top 8ing, I believe, 2 different TPC events and just showing that he's able to compete under pressure. So for all of those reasons, these contenders, while they may not be our favorites, are more than capable of making a deep run and earning a slot for some of them back to the Tactician's crown.
These are players that we'd be surprised to see in the bottom half of the leaderboard and would be surprised if, some of them don't make that final lobby and give themselves a shot for the Tactician's crown. Players that have shown consistency over the sets, players that may be household names for some of us, big streamers, also longtime competitors. So excited to see them continue on their performance. But another group of competitors that has ups and downs, and some of the highs are really high. Some of the lows are really low. And we're starting to see some of these players take shape, coming from weekend 1 for some of them, coming from the TPC for others. These players could go first or they could go last.
Yeah, I think we could sit and talk about the players on this slide forever. And so I just want to pick one to highlight. The one that stands out to me the most is Chunnington. Chunnington, I think, had a very quiet entrance into the TPC, coming in through, this study group of the Boom Kitchen last set that had a huge representation at the regional finals, and then largely struggled in the TPC despite doing exceptionally well on ladder. And then play-ins comes along, week 1 comes along, Chunnington smurfs all weekend, makes it in those top 8 players that got the immediate cut on day 2 of week 1. And to me, I think he's kind of thrust himself into this grouping of players to watch going into weekend 2. So I'm going to have my eyes on Chunnington.
A player that I'm having my eyes on specifically is somebody that we put in this category last week, and I would still put him in this category because Milk is now back in America and locked in enough to make it to week 2. He's back in the TPC. He is ready to make another possible run at the Tactician's crown, and really is someone that no one should underestimate. If he's in your lobby, you know the prowess that Milk has. He is historically somebody that we might even put in the favorites category, but again, just has been adventuring, traveling around, enjoying the world, which is a great thing to do, but maybe not always best for your TFT performance. So each of these players has their own story, some of them through incredible high highs on ladder, like JD and Lumen and Me First or 8th specifically, and now excited to see them perform on this stage again to see if they can have some consistency in tournaments. But moving forward just a little bit more to our final category, the underdogs. The players that we look at, we say, all right, these players, we've seen them maybe never before at this stage. We've seen them maybe 1 time before or 2 times before. Now, what do they have to prove at this level of play?
Yeah, and this is a tough category because I think we're all in agreement that every single one of the players that's in this event is elite, and they're all capable of making a deep run or winning the entire event if the rolls go their way. But the thing that separates these players, like you're saying, Jack, is either the lack of experience or certain performances at this caliber of play that stand out. To me, Jungle Book is a good example of this, where I think he's been getting a lot of attention over the last few sets, but has yet to have a top half finish at a major event, an elite regionals level event. On the flip side, though, Crazy Cat, we talked a little bit about him at the top of the show. Coming out of nowhere, player that nobody knew 2 months ago, has now started this Cinderella story to make it into week 2, qualified to the TPC. And, while I don't necessarily think I have them favored in the field, and it's hard to give a good reason for why you would, I do think that based on what we saw of week 1, they deserve to be here. And if they can prove that they are not just a participant, they're a contender, or maybe even elite player in the Americas, I would love to see that story happen. And to touch on 2 other players super briefly, Josue and Shaco, each of these players coming from Latin America and Brazil respectively. Josue is the one that stands out. We had Pi Hat on the broadcast last weekend, and he was saying Josue, the best player from Peru and one of the best players from Latin America to have never made it to a Tactician's crown. Shaco, on the other hand, is a player who I feel like has not been in the limelight of Brazilian players, especially because so many Brazilians have kind of become centers of attention since the merging of the regions. And the last time we saw Shaco perform at a more elite competition, he didn't really inspire confidence. So I think Shaco has a great opportunity for some redemption going into this weekend.
This group also realizes that, hey, we're in the TPC now. It's time to make a name for myself. And this weekend is a great chance for each of them to set themselves up well for next set, right? The TPC, they require streaming, they require all these things, and many of these players we don't get to see too much on stream. They have not built their brands, their personalities when it comes to being professional TFT players, but hey, you guys are here now. It's time. It's time to show the world who you are. And so I love this category and love rooting for these guys because you may not know them now, but watch. They're going to show up. They're going to surprise us all. And they're going to have the opportunity to consistently do that throughout to this weekend and next set in the TPC, already locking in a slot in the regional finals next set also. So these players, we don't know them now. We may have them in this underdog category, but that should not discourage them because now it's time to prove that they really got what it takes. These player buckets really do help give us a story of what we expect from our players this weekend. And we see our overview graphic of these buckets. And victory lap, those players that have already qualified, our favorites, the contenders, the volatile players, and our underdogs. Gangly, going into this weekend, what are you expecting to see from these groups of players? How are you expecting this weekend to kind of go?
I'm going to say right now, we're putting these players as like favorites, contenders, etc. I am absolutely not expecting to see our top 8 be only players from favorites and contenders. I think that we are going to have 2 to 3 players, maybe even 4 players from this volatile or underdog category to make the deep run. And I'm excited to see that because some of those players are a bit maniacal, and I'm excited to see them bring their style of TFT to the most elite level.
We know that wasn't the case last weekend. We didn't have all of the favorites and contenders and all those players that we thought would make it out and would put statistically in that category, make it forward, because that's what TFT is. It's a story of underdogs, of people going from the couch to the crown, and we're excited to see who will get to that crown stage this weekend and have the opportunity to do that. But Gangly, let's do it. Let's make our predictions. Let's pick a favorite and a dark horse from the tournament to see who we think will make it to the Tactician's crown. And here we go. Gangly, you said K3 Soju and Dehua.
Currently, my predictions have a 0% advancement rate, so I'm really hoping that surely I don't miss 2 more times. But I said it before when we were on the favorite slide. Soju is maybe not normally considered a favorite, but I'm gonna double down on it. I think Soju is a favorite going into this tournament. I believe that when Soju tries as hard as he possibly can, he is more than capable of making it to a Tactician's crown. I want to see him back on the international stage, and this time maybe even with the top 8 at the Tactician's crown. On the other side, I talked about some of the maniacal volatile players. This is Dehua, right? This is a guy who we know he loves to lose, and once he stops losing, you better watch out. because he knows how to win from it. So I'm really excited to see him bring this, more volatile play style to the regional finals. We had him all TPC long. He's been very fun to watch, and I hope it stays that way.
My favorite is the two-time world champion himself. That is Dish Soap. Hard to not pick this guy to be a favorite. Kind of maybe a little bit of a cop-out here. But this format specifically rewards somebody like Dish Soap, who's probably the most consistent top 4 player in the whole world. And so when top 4s matter most, he's going to show up. He is going to compete for his 6th straight Tactician's Crown appearance. So just can't wait to see him continue to perform this weekend. And also my dark horse from the ladder, Lumen, who I looked at going to last week. I said, okay, you've been rank 1 all set, basically. I am excited to see how you show up. And they went on and were rank 1 during week 1. And so I said, might as well continue the trend. He may still be dark horse. This is one of his first times on the stage, and I expect to see him do big things here. So speaking of the Tactician's Crown, that's the next thing. We are at the last event of our calendar before the Tactician's Crown. This is Regional Finals Week 2. November 14th through the 16th will be the Tactician's Crown with all of our players on LAN, half of them in Spain, half of them over in China as well. It is going to be a spectacle to watch, a spectacle to keep up with, and we're so excited that we get to show who's going to make it through to the Tactician's Crown, because this is the end, Gangly. The postseason's almost over.
To put it in the words of my good friend, Jack CLE Hopkins, this TPC season has been electric. Just from top to bottom, everything has been fun to watch. I mean, the drama, the stakes, and we still have more in front of us, right? All weekend long, we're going to have some of the best games of TFT from the set. So, yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy the show.
Yeah, we're going to be continuing to be on the show. I'm going to be on the show today. Gangly didn't want to show up in costume, so he's not showing up today. But it makes sense. Yeah. We're so excited for this, and we're thankful to have this opportunity to be able to bring the Rolldown to the pre-show and be able to share some stories with you guys. If you did enjoy, you can find us on YouTube at the Rolldown or anywhere that you find your podcasts. If you want to continue to follow along throughout the set, throughout the TPC next set, and into the further beyond. So, without further ado, Gangly, it's time. Let's get ready for week number 2 of the Regional Finals broadcast.